Hello, Keith. It's been a long time.
It has, yeah. Apologies, everyone, for our tardiness.
Yeah, I think life has gotten in the way a bit, hasn't it?
So what have you been up to?
I've been having a big workshop rearrange over the last few months. I don't know, it just wasn't a place, not that it wasn't a place I wanted to be, but it was just a room I made the videos in, and yeah, which is nice. But it's like, no, I want to turn it into, I hate the phrase man cave, but that kind of thing, making it somewhere you want to go to, your little safe space, your sanctuary. So I've been putting things on the walls. I've got boxes and boxes of old tools, which I love. I'm going to hang them up. I'm going to arrange them. Built a new workbench, which is, as someone pointed out, I broke my number one workshop rule, which is everything on casters. And then I put this massive workbench that's all built in. But sometimes rules are meant to be broken, and I'm really pleased with it. It's a much better use of space. The other day, I even took my laptop out there, sat at the new workbench and edited a video, sat in the workshop, because it's just a place I want to sit. When you're feeling unmotivated, you just need to make a few changes, don't you? And
Yeah.
Until you like it again.
I'm the same as you used to be in terms of everything that goes on casters, but when I think about it, I move my planer in and out from the wall. I move my table saw occasionally if I need to make specific cuts that require outfeed or width. I move my main workbench all the time. I move my bandsaw out from the wall occasionally, but my secondary workbench, which is kind of like my outfeed table, and then I've got another 3 chests of drawers on wheels, and they never move. They just sit there all the time. Yeah, I'd never really thought about that before.
And you had your big miter saw station that obviously never moved. And how are you getting on without it?
I can't say I don't miss it occasionally, but overall I still think it was the right decision for me. It's just that extra time setting up cuts, and also I have to think more about my process in order to get things more efficient. So I need to do all my cross cuts in one go while the crosscut thing, miter gauge or crosscut sled is set up, and then I have to do all my rip cuts in one go, because if I work in the way that I used to work, which is basically crosscut here, rip cut here, etc., the whole process just takes ages because you're just constantly setting things up.
Yeah. I was doing that this week. I was swapping out rip blades to crosscut blades, and then I had to do it again and then again. And I should have thought this through and done them all at once.
I've been a bit naughty with that recently, in that I used to kind of swap my blades out for crosscuts and rip cuts, but I haven't even got a combination blade fitted. I've got a rip blade fitted, which leaves a pretty rough cut, to be honest. I think it's a 28 tooth or something like that. But I'm just using it for everything at the moment because I just can't be bothered to change it.
It's pretty quick, the change on the Bosch one, I have to say, because it's you just do a half turn to get the plate out, and then it's got a spindle lock. Yeah, combination blade I think is probably what I need to get. Because I was trying to do cross-cutting with the rip blade, and as you say, it leaves a pretty rough finish.
Yeah.
And on the oak, he was really chipping out. And I was like, no, there's no point. I've got a nice piece of wood, and then you're destroying the edges. But you're lazy sometimes. Like, I can't be bothered to change it.
That's it, yeah. Actually, while we're on the subject of table saws, I've seen a lot of new kind of entry-level saws come out recently that seem to tick a lot of the boxes that, things that we've mentioned on this podcast several times about. So things like the Rutlands and the Evolution.
The Lumberjack.
Yeah.
Yeah. They all look very similar, I think, actually, don't they? I think they've all got the rack and pinion.
Yeah, they may well be the same machines rebadged. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I've not really looked into it that much. But certainly the Evolution one, which I've seen a few videos about, looks pretty impressive, really, for the money. And I think there's 2 different models, isn't there? There's like a higher spec one with a higher powered motor, and then you get like an electric brake and a soft start, which...
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, which I think is like a no-brainer, really. If it's like 50 quid extra or whatever for that, I would pay that all day for those kind of features.
The soft start is, definitely a great thing to have. Especially, I think, probably would be essential for me running it off the battery banks.
Yeah.
I imagine that initial draw of just doing 2,000 watts as soon as you flick the switch is probably
Yeah.
Terrible. I mean, I say 2,000. I don't know what it is. I've just pulled up the thing because I've not really looked into them or seen much. But yeah, no, it's kind of just a cheaper version of the DeWalt that you had for years. But I think
Yeah.
you said when you sold that, you almost got your money back for it. They really hold their value, and I imagine the prices have gone up for them.
Yeah, I think I actually got more than I paid for it originally,
Yeah.
which is absolutely bonkers. But yeah, it's interesting as well how long it takes these manufacturers to come up with a cheaper model of something that already exists. Because when was the DW745 released? I mean, that must be coming up to 8 years, maybe longer. I don't know.
I don't know because it's not even made anymore, is it? I don't think.
No, I think they've put battery models out to replace it now.
Yeah.
I think it's got a smaller blade, although I think they make another one with a bigger blade. But yeah, I mean, it's taken the best part of 10 years for these cheaper manufacturers to come up with the goods.
No, it's great because I don't think there were any good cheap table saws. All the essential things of a table saw, like the fence, was always terrible on the cheap ones, which made them unusable. What's the point if the fence is bad on a table saw? That's kind of a pretty essential thing. But if you've got this rack and pinion fence on it, I'm sure it's going to be noisy. But yeah, it's £300 or around that. Yeah, no, it's good. Good these things are out.
Makes you think as well about this whole Festool domino patent, which, I mean, I've been hearing for years, the patent's coming to an end, but as I understand it, it is actually coming to an end. I think it might be this year, or I don't know, not sure. But I was chatting to Peter about it the other day, and he's saying, no, it actually is happening, kind of thing. And it makes you wonder how long it will take manufacturers to come up with a cheaper alternative of that. I bet they're in a bit of a race in order to get something to the market with the similar kind of mechanism.
It's a strange one because it's quite a niche market, isn't it? It's not like a saw or a drill.
It hasn't got that wide appeal, has it?
Not many job sites have dominoes on them, but there's a hell of a lot of impact drivers. But I don't know if you saw a video the other week by Stumpy Nubs about the saw stop and how they're actually trying to ban now any table saws in America that don't have the saw stop technology.
That's crazy, isn't it?
And SawStop are going to give up their patent
Really?
for it so everyone can use it, apparently. But even he was saying, even if they do that, you got Harbour Freight and own brand stuff, you're not going to buy $100 table saw because it's that technology, and then the saw's got to be so much bigger and heavier to be able to cope with an explosion going off to stop the blade. So it's going to kill the cheap saw market. And he was saying it might kill the second-hand market because the liability thing, maybe if you sold your second-hand saw, someone could then chop the hand off. Well, you know what, I don't want to insult our American listeners, but as Brits, we've got a view of America that you're very litigation happy. Yeah, because if they change it in America, you know the knock-on effect will be they're not going to make a different saw for different markets, probably. Well, I guess they do because it's different power, but they always seem very similar.
Someone will find a way around it, won't they?
Yeah.
I finally made a start on that oak extending dining table that I feel like I've been speaking about for years now. In fact, I'm kind of nearly done. I've done the tabletop, which is basically a central top with 2 extending leaves. I've done the frame. I glued that up last night. But the next bit is the tricky part, which is the kind of mechanism that I'm working on for the leaves of the table to sit underneath the main top. So they're self-storing leaves, so they sit underneath the top. It's very clever. I say it's very clever. It's not something that I've designed. Well, I have designed it, but I've designed it based on what I've seen, if you know what I mean. I've had to draw it up to try and figure it out. And it took me ages to figure out how to get it to work. But something interesting happened, actually, while I was building it. I've been storing up every offcut of oak that I've had from various commissions over the years and some salvaged oak and all sorts of stuff with this project in mind. And then when I started milling up all of the timber, I found that about 50% of what I had wasn't oak.
Oh, really?
It was ash. So it has a very kind of similar grain pattern, but obviously it's a lot lighter in colour.
Yeah.
And when you put an oak board and a ash board side by side, I mean, I did try diluting a dye, an oak wood dye, to try and get it to match, and it looked fairly convincing, but I don't think I would have ever been happy with it. So I actually went to a timber merchant's and bought some oak, which was
nice.
a bit of a revelation for me. And I learned loads, actually, because, I went to 2 timber merchants. One of them I went to with Stuart, actually, Property DIY Stuart. They had quite a lot of oak, but I brought a knife with me because I always have a knife in my pocket. That's legal. It's not got too big a blade on it or anything. And I took a kind of carving off the end of the board just to see if the colour underneath, and it just looked completely different to what I was working with on the table. And I was kind of speaking to the guys that ran the place, and it's like, I don't think this is the right sort of oak. And I'd never really looked into the variations in oak and the differences, and how extreme those differences can be. But Stuart mentioned, you should go to this one in Norwich because they've got this huge offcuts room. And I said to Stuart, well, I've been there before. When I spoke to the guys, they basically took me out into the yard and I picked up this massive board of oak, which was way bigger than I needed. And I didn't know about an offcuts room. It's like they've been keeping an offcuts room from me. So I went there after we'd visited that one. They've got racks full of different species of oak. So I was able to kind of pull out each board, European oak, English oak, American white oak, and compare them. And that's when I kind of realised that the oak that I had, that I was working with, was American white oak, which fortunately also happened to be the cheapest out of all 3. So yeah, it seems like European and English oak, which you might assume would be cheaper, are actually more expensive. So I bought some American white oak boards. I bought about maybe 5 or 6 boards. It came to about just under £100, and I've used that to finish off.
Oh, well, that sounds a great resource to have found.
I don't know if I'll be back there frequently because obviously it's not often that I buy wood. But yeah, it's nice to learn a little bit about it.
So do you know if American white oak comes from America or it's just a name of a species of tree that's actually grown here now?
Yeah, no, I don't know. The thing that I found most curious was, even though it's called American white oak, it's darker than all of the other oaks. Which is just your classic timber thing, really, isn't it? Oh yeah, of course it doesn't make sense.
Because they have red oak, don't they? So I guess it's whiter than red oak.
I guess so. I don't know.
Oh, well, that sounds a nice colour because it's that warm colour that's nice in oak. And how much ash have you got? Have you got enough ash now all put together to build a project out of that?
I've got so much ash, yeah. A lot of what I've used to make the frame are oak handrails. So They're kind of like these big, they're about this big. Obviously someone's run it through a spindle moulder because it's got that profile on the sides. I've just cut those off. And there's actually quite a lot of usable timber in those. I got them from Facebook Marketplace years and years ago.
And some more kindling for the log burner.
Yes, yeah. I'm actually just looking at a website article between the differences between red oak and white oak. When you look at them side by side, they're not actually hugely different, but white oak certainly has more of a brown tinge to it, and red oak has kind of very subtle pinkish kind of colour tones to it.
Depends on the finish, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you maybe on a varnish you'd notice, but if you put, say, an oil on, that's going to yellow everything and darken it a bit more anyway.
That's true, yeah.
But you wouldn't want to risk it on your dining room table, would you? You wouldn't want to build something and then go, I just don't like it.
No, exactly right. I really want it to be I've worked really hard on this one, and so far, do you ever have one of those projects where nothing's gone wrong?
I'm touching wood for you here.
Yeah. And I've just got a feeling something is going to bite me sooner or later.
I can't wait to see how you've solved this problem, because we've talked about it a lot, but you can't really explain how the mechanism works, because we've tried to do this on the podcast before, and trying to explain mechanical mechanisms via a podcast is not the best.
No.
So I'm excited to see how you've done it, because I've never done anything like that before. Things that change in sunlight, like walnut, are terrible for that, because you put the extension in and then suddenly there's such different colours because the top's been bleached. But oak's pretty good for keeping its colour.
One slight regret I've got is that I kind of wanted all 3 tops, when placed together, the grain to be running in the same direction down the length. But I've had to do it with, the two extensions running perpendicular to the main top, if that makes sense. Traditionally, you see a lot anyway in tables, but purely had to do it that way because of the oak I had to work with. I just didn't have any long enough lengths to do it all.
Yeah, a short bit could snap, couldn't it, if you had it that way?
Yes, yeah.
I had a table that all the boards were the other way.
Yeah.
Not the lengthways, sideways. And the bits hung over the ends of the frame by about a foot. And I kind of leant on it once and it flexed. I was like, oh, if I was to sit on the end of this table, this would just snap off. It's like, but I guess maybe it was a cheap table and that was just the cheaper way of doing it. It's probably a more efficient use of material.
Yeah.
To use them sideways. But yeah, it's not the way I'd ever dream of doing a tabletop.
Oh, after I went to the timber merchant as well, I had my camera in the car to film a little bit of being inside the timber merchant and picking up the boards. And because I was in the city, I thought I might just have a wander around like I used to do, around kind of like the alleyways where I used to live, communal bin areas, and see what junk I can find and try and make something out of it. So I spent the rest of that day doing that, and I had a great time. I was able to film kind of some scenic shots around Norwich, and you know all of these walking videos where someone will set up a camera and walk away from it or whatever. And I just really enjoyed doing that stuff. And I found a decent amount of junk as well, which I put in my car, took home, and I built a project out of that. It was so refreshing just to do something out of my comfort zone, a little bit different. And I really want to turn it into like a series now where I do it regularly. Because obviously since moving out to the countryside, you don't really get stuff laying around. You don't get many skips or communal bin areas around where I live.
It's such a interesting thing, is it? Because obviously we're known as woodworkers, but 50% of what we do is videography.
Yeah.
And we can vary our woodworking from project to project vastly. You could carve a spoon in one and make a table in the next. But the videography is like, it's the same. It's the same camera in the same room doing the same thing, and you try and change bits, but when you actually get to go out and do something different, it's really quite fun.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You improve over the years and you pick up tricks and stuff, but then you use those tricks over and over again. And one of the challenges I had was, as I say, I had my camera in the car, but I didn't have a tripod with me. So I had to kind of try and find things. So I was perching it on people's bins and walls and all sorts of stuff to try and get the footage that I wanted.
Oh, you have to do it again. No, that sounds great. And I think not having the tripod is great because limitations increase creativity, I think.
Which is utterly, apt for what I had to do on this project as well, because I only had a limited amount of materials and I had to come up with, what can I build that's going to be useful around the house with the materials I picked up that day, because I didn't want to just be able to grab a piece of wood from a shelf and use it. I wanted to use only the stuff I found. While I was out and about, saw a pile of stuff leaning up against the wall of a shop. And I thought, I'll go in the shop and ask if I can take some of that stuff and I'll film it. I really had to pluck up the courage to do that because obviously it's pretty daunting for someone like me to do something like that. But I did it and it paid off. And he said, yeah, you can take it kind of thing. And that's all going to be part of the video as well.
That's amazing. And I've never been in a city where you can go and do that because you're out and about and you see things, but I'm never in a position to pick them up.
It could just be that the council in Norwich are terrible at clearing up fly tipping.
Right. Is that what it is? It's fly tipping, is it mostly?
It is essentially fly tipping, yeah. I think pretty much most of the stuff I got that day was just people leaving stuff in alleyways. There's a whole problem in Norwich because obviously in order to take stuff to the dump, you need a car. And a lot of these people who live in this area don't have a car. So how are they going to take it to the dump? So yeah, they just leave it outside, unfortunately. But it's great for people like me who can come along picking stuff up. But it's also pretty depressing when you're... I mean, one of the alleyways I filmed in the video was such a state. There was like bike frames, bottles, clothing, just strewn about all over the place.
Well, you got some free wood and got to clean up the community. I mean, that's a win-win. I go to car boot sales a lot, and it's amazing how your eye gets tuned into something. You see one item, and then you see another 6 of those items. But when you go out and you're looking for wood, you see it everywhere. as if you're not really looking, you don't see it. I mean, I'm not wording this well at all, but
No, I know exactly what you mean.
our local tip, they've got 2 shipping containers where they put the good things that they've managed to save.
Yeah.
And they're so cheap. I mean, they hardly want anything other. Go, 50p for that. There was a mid-century coffee table the other day, and I just don't. Well, I do need a coffee table, but I want to do a video so it fits where I need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the tip's good. It's a shame they don't save more of the wood.
This is it. Yeah, I've often thought the same, because our recycling centre has that as well. And I've picked up quite a lot of stuff from there over the years. I bought a pair of vintage Wharfdale speakers, which are like, they must be £300 to buy them second hand, but they were a fiver.
Yeah, it's great.
Like you say, it would make so much sense to kind of try and salvage some of those building materials that get thrown away and just have a yard somewhere where people can just rifle through them and pick stuff up.
The trouble is you just need someone at the bottom of the steps to the wood bit, like stopping and checking everything. I went there on Tuesday thinking, it's after the bank holiday, there might be some good stuff in there. And I had some scrap to get rid of. And it was just full of old bits of fencing at the time.
Yeah. Imagine if you could just spend the whole day at the bottom of the chute in the wood skip. That'd be my idea of heaven.
I know. Want to build something for the garden, and I'm going to build it out of deck boards, because deck boards, I think, are like the 3x2s of the treated wood world.
Yeah.
That they're always on offer. They're like the lost leader, I think.
Yeah.
They're so much cheaper than any other wood. I'm like, well, I'm going to use those. But people ripping up their decks, even if the ends have rotted, like, I probably could have got enough wood out of a rotted deck board, but they're scrap to other people. But for me, they're going to make what I need.
What are you making then? Is this the bench you mentioned?
Oh, did I mention a bench?
Was it a Patreon video? Maybe. Yeah, it was a Patreon video. I think I watched it yesterday.
I can't even remember talking about it, but then that's my stream of consciousness. Yeah, I want to make one of those locker benches.
Locker bench? I'm not sure I know what that is.
A trunk, say, that you can sit on.
Okay.
To just... the shed's full, and I can't build a 4th shed, but I could probably build a bench that I can store things in the seat.
I see. Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. I liked your video on the cheap shed.
I couldn't believe it.
That piece of cling film or whatever it was that was meant to be the window.
All the reviews were kind of bad, and so I knew it'd be bad. But I think I talked about it on this podcast before. I've got a shed full of tools, obviously. But if you were just a normal homeowner and you were to put this thing together and you didn't have clamps to pull it into position, and the door was about 0.5 centimetre bigger than the gap, and so, fine, I'll just grab the track saw out and rip a bit off. But if you don't have that...
Yeah.
And now I've spent the money repairing the roof of the shed and repairing the windows, I could have probably have built a shed. But the difference was it got delivered, I had it up in 2 hours on my own, and it's tricky-ish on your own. Now I look back like, I wish it was a better shed.
So you've been to a lot of car boot sales then. What have you picked up from there? Are you still looking for chisels and things?
So many chisels, Keith. So many chisels. I got something the other week. I bought some pigeonholes. I think you have got something like it in your workshop, haven't you?
Like cubby things.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to do a video about boot sale finds, because I've got them all in a box. And I carried them back to my car, and my hands were orange with rust, and my shirt. But I don't want to... I'm going to have to maybe wash the rust off a bit, and then I think I'll wax them because I like the look.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put them up on the wall, some other bits. One of the points I was going to make in the video, which goes very nicely with your free wood one, is actually the entry level to woodworking can be very cheap.
Yes.
You can get the wood for free, and you can get not just tools at car boot sale, you can get quality tools.
Yeah.
Like marples, chisels for 50p. Okay, you've got to learn to sharpen them, and that's maybe I don't take that into consideration because we've been doing this for years and we have learnt how to clean rust off tools and how to sharpen them. But actually, when you're first getting into it, that's a whole new skill set to learn. But even if you was to buy a brand new marbles chisel, you'd have to sharpen it before you used it. They don't come that sharp.
This is it. Yep, you're going to have to learn how to do it one way or another anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. But you can probably buy things that are better quality at boot sales than most. Like a brand new Stanley chisel is probably not that great quality, but a 40-year-old marbles one is. And I just enjoy the walking around and rummaging boxes. I love it.
Me too. I just don't like the early mornings.
No, but I like sitting down. The one we go to has a great burger van and have a breakfast bap and
nice.
Yeah.
Well, even materials. I haven't bought a great deal of materials at car boot sales, but I've seen them.
I got a massive oak slab the other week. I forgot. It was about 40 centimetres by 60 centimetres by maybe 5 centimetres thick. So a big slab. And I was like, oh, I'll ask how much. But if it was a wholesaler, it'd probably be about £100.
Yeah.
But he might say 40 or something. He said a £5.
No way. That's crazy.
And he had a bigger one as well, but it's like, and he was going to be there the next week. He said, I've got loads more. I've just been bringing it, because they're so big, I've only been bringing a couple, but we couldn't go for a couple of weeks.
Should have got this guy's address and gone round to his house.
But my brother-in-law had messaged me about, he'd been watching James Martin on Saturday morning cooking show, and apparently he's got a big slab chopping block.
Yeah. And
he wanted a big slab chopping block. And I said, live edge, thick slabs are expensive.
Yeah.
But now, I've just got to plane this down and put some feet on it and oil it and give it to him for his birthday, and he's going to be thrilled.
Nice.
I won't tell him it cost me a £5. There's some really interesting things there. Obviously got all the sellers that have all the tools they've stolen out the back of vans as well.
Yeah.
So, I got loads of new tools. No, didn't really. I've never bought off those people.
I think like people go to the extreme on these things, and they just assume that everyone who's selling any tool is selling a stolen tool.
There's definitely the sellers that have every brand and piled high, and like, oh yeah, that's...
You can tell once, can't you? Yeah, totally.
My friend has just signed up to a vintage and craft fair to do a stall. So I will help, and I'm going to have to make some display material next week actually for it. But as an idea of like selling some more, don't use this phrase, but manly vintage stuff. Because most people that go to vintage fairs and craft fairs, because I've done a few craft fairs myself, it's mostly women. So if you can sell things that could be gifts for men. Yeah,
there's a whole other market there. Yeah. I thought you were going to say sell some stuff that you make.
Well, I could do. You might combine the two. I bought this oak to make some lamps months ago. It's not a video because these are things I want to make to sell.
Yeah.
But it's finding the time to do it. And when you're trying to do something a bit nice and higher end, you can't go, I've got 2 hours now. Yeah. You need to, right, I've got the day free, the workshop's tidy, I can just do it.
You sound a bit like me in that you like to flip between different projects, because I've been doing a lot of that in the past few weeks. Last year I was a bit more disciplined in terms of trying to finish something before starting something else, but this year I've just been enjoying, because it's a lot. It's the variation. It keeps me excited.
I'm not sure I particularly do like that. The roof is just a very much you got to do this bit and wait for it to dry.
Yeah,
and that's
hope that the weather's going to be okay.
Yeah, but doing the thing only takes an hour. But you've put on your work trousers with the padded knees because you're on your knees, and everything's covered in tar. I do like that aspect of what we do. That some days you wake up and go, I am not motivated to film a video, because it's not just you got to do the thing. You've got to talk to camera and not be too boring.
Yes, yeah.
If you're not in the mood, then I think that really comes across.
Yeah.
But it's nice that I can go, oh, well, today I'm just going to sit at the computer then and do my accounts, edit videos. There's always other jobs. But I can't do computer stuff for long. I do half an hour of video editing, and then I have to go, right, I'm going to go and clean some paintbrushes, or just even 15 minutes I have to get up and do something. and
Yeah.
then go back to it. So I've been watching something that's not on YouTube as well. I've been watching Danny Sandhouse. He's got 64,000 followers on Instagram. And basically what he does is, you're going to love this, is wood refinishing. Mainly floors. And he's a real character, so he does great little videos on there. But somehow, watching someone sand a wooden floor and then refinishing it is really interesting. And I would never have thought I would be into it. I thought you'd be interested because you're sad like that. But I thought I'm far too cool to like wood refinishing videos. But no, they're great.
Sounds good. He's on TikTok as well. I've just found him, so yeah.
Oh, is he?
Stuff. Oh, he's on YouTube as well. I watched a really interesting video by Ben at Hugh and Orr recently where he interviewed a guy at a sawmill.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you saw it, but I learned loads. Really chilled, laid-back guy. I think Ben's probably known him for years, I would imagine. But yeah, it's called UK Sawmill, How Hardwood Lumber is Made, Everything You Need to Know. Ben's questions are spot on, and the production of the video is just a really enjoyable watch. 41 minutes long, so it's Hugh and Orr, Hewawe, UK Sawmill, How Hardwood Lumber is Made, Everything You Need to Know. Really good video.
Oh, that's great. And I imagine it'd make it a lot less intimidating going to a sawmill after you feel you know the terminology and what's going on. Yeah,
they cover all sorts of stuff, the machinery, various different methods. I think they mention sort of all these terms that they use in the US and how they cubic meters, square foot, whatever, blah, 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 all of that stuff. But it's really interesting.
Right, it's on my watch later list.
Can I squeeze in one more as well?
Oh, well, you always try this.
It's a video called Making My Mark by Martin Murray Wood Design. And it's just a different perspective on branding your work. So obviously a lot of people use branding irons. This is basically making kind of like an inlay in wood. He basically makes a block with this inlay that repeats down the entire length of the block. I'm probably explaining this horribly. He turns it on the lathe so it's cylindrical, and then he slices it up, and you've got all of these repeat things that you can use to brand your work. It's just absolute genius, but also it's got his exceptional brand of humour in it. It's hilarious. He's just so entertaining, I think. But yeah, Martin Murray Wood Design, Making My Mark.
That's interesting, and it's what I think I need to do with my branding iron is make a bracket for it that sits right above where I work on the workbench.
So you don't forget to use it?
I forget to use it
Me too.
in every single thing. It's just... And especially when I've made something I'm really pleased with that I think were last year's. Like,
yeah.
Why did I not put my mark on that? And it looks so great on camera as well.
Yeah.
The smoke coming off as you lift it off. And every time.
That reminds me, actually, I must go and stamp that oak table that I'm working on.
Yes, yeah. It's always after you put the finish on you remember.
Yeah.